All right, 1 second here. All right, so welcome everyone. We're back. Book of Leviticus Chapter 16. Again, want to welcome everyone holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 16. We are in verse 24. Again, Book of Leviticus Chapter 16, verse 24. And we spoke about a few weeks back, spoke about Aaron Cohen removing his garments, his linen garments, putting on gold garments back and forth, switching the garments. And every time he switched his garments, had to go to the mikveh, right? Had to immerse himself, right? And that we spoke about. So we're in verse 24 again. We are in chapter 16, Book of Leviticus, chapter 16, verse 24. Torah tells me, it says, "Varachatz es bisaro b'mayim makom kadosh v'lavash es begadov v'yatze es olasoy es olas am kiper bado bad am." Right, the Torah says that he's going to immerse his flesh in water, i.e., he's going to go to the mikveh. Right, he's going to immerse his flesh in water. Right after he switched his clothing here. And he's going to do it in a sacred place. Going to have to see what that means. He's going to don his garments. He should go out, offer his own ola offering, and the meaning the burnt offering, and the burnt offering of the people. In other words, one going to atone for him, and one for the people, shall provide atonement for himself and for the people. Right, that is, that's what the Torah says. He's going to go out and he's going to go to mikveh, right? He's going to sanctify himself, right, so to speak, so to speak, and then, he's going to change his clothes. And what's he going to do? He's going to do it in a sacred place and bring his own burnt offering, all of the, burnt offering for him, for the people, etc. And that's what he's going to do. All right, that's what he's going to do over here. It'll be atonement for him and for the people. All right, that's what the Torah says. Now, that being said, 1 second. Yeah, Rashi over here says, first of all, what does it mean? He's immersed in his flesh. Right? Seemingly, we know, right? We said this before. In verse 4. Right? You go back to chapter 16, verse 4, right? Many moons ago. And what does the Torah say? Torah says he's going to don a sacred linen ketones. He's going to wear linen pants, be on his flesh, gird himself with linen avnei, cover his head, etc. He's going to immerse his flesh in water. So why repeat it? Right? Why do we repeat it over here? What's the point? What's the point of repeating it? I said before, he's going to immerse his flesh in water. So normally, Torah never repeats anything unless it's there to tell you something else. Right? In other words, if the Torah tells me something, and then the Torah is going to repeat it to the purpose. It's going to be an obvious purpose. Why it's going to be repeated? Because the Torah does not say things more than once for seemingly no reason. So here it says, the Rashi explains, we learned above, He's going to immerse the flesh in water, and then he's going to don these clothing. When he changes from garments of gold to garments of white linen, right? What do we say requires immersion? Right? He has to dunk, he has to go to the mikveh. Right? It requires immersion. If he took off his garments of gold, when he performed the service of the continual oil offering, i.e., the burnt offering in the morning, and then he changes from gold and puts on garments of white linen, Rashi says, for the performance of the service is unique to the day of Yom Kippur. So when he changes back and forth, changes from the gold clothing to the linen clothing, vice versa, every single time he changes, he's got to immerse. That's when it comes out. He has to immerse. But that's only done when? Only done on Yom Kippur. Not done any other time. Right? It's done on Yom Kippur. And here we learned that when he changes from garments of white linen to garments of gold, he also requires immersion. Right? He also requires immersion over here. So he's also going to go to the mikveh. So I can understand that, he's wearing less clothing, less garments. Then he wears more garments. Okay. So if I know that if he's wearing the gold garments, takes them off, he has to immerse, then from the linen garments to the gold garments, I would also say he has to immerse. Right? So in either case, he has to immerse. Right over here. That the Medrash brings down, that the Gemara and Yuma 32b, right? Also brings down. So in either case, whenever he changed clothing, very good. He had to immerse. Even though the Torah tells me before he had to immerse, but the Torah is telling me something new. The Torah is telling you, Rashi explains, he's telling you that when you go from gold clothes to linen and vice versa, you have to immerse. Right? That's what's going on over here. Then the Torah tells me, the Torah says, he's got to immerse in water where? In a sacred place. What does it mean, a sacred place? Meaning the place that is mekudash. What does mekudash mean? Sanctified. It is consecrated. We're at the sanctity, the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash, right? Of the temple itself. Got the sanctity of the, it has to be with the sanctity of the courtyard. And where was that? That was on the roof of the house of Parva. Now, what is the house of Parva exactly? So the Gemara explains that it was a building on the grounds of the Beis Hamikdash. It was a building on the grounds of the temple. Now, the Gemara explains, Yuma 35a, what does the Gemara here tell me? Gemara says Parva was a Amgusha, right? Amgusa. What is an Amgusa or Amgusha in Aramaic is a sorcerer. So it says he was a Persian sorcerer. And Rashi here adds that he built the chamber that bore his name. In other words, he's the one who built it. Right? Very nice. Right? He built it. Right? He built it. It's got his name on it. Very, I guess can't forget what it's called because he named it after himself. Right? Now, that's one thing. Another explanation is what is parva? That he so desired to observe the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, when he performed the Yom Kippur service. What did he do? He tunneled under and into the Beis Hamikdash. Now, this person, wanted to get deeper insight and see what goes on, when the Kohen Gadol does the service. Well, it's kind of going to be a problem because there are places they wouldn't be allowed to go. But okay, let's see what happened. What happened over here? So he decided to see the high priest. Or one of the commentators there explains, what did he do? He tunneled under and into the Beis Hamikdash. Now, Kohanim discovered that he was there. What did they do? They killed him. Why did they kill him? Why did he deserve to die? Trespassing. He's going in a place he doesn't belong. Right? In other words, he's coming to desanctify the place. You're going to say, come on, he's got interest. He wants to see what's going on. Well, too bad. There are certain things you're allowed to do. You're not allowed to do. Right? Can't reinvent the wheel over here. Certain things you can't do, period. Right? What do you want? Can't do it. Not allowed to. You're not allowed to. Right? So therefore, he's trespassing. Trespassing, death penalty over here. But nonetheless, in recognition of his misplaced devotion, they named one of the chambers after him. Interesting. But, I'd say, why would they name it after him? What would happen? They end up killing him. Okay. Right. In other words, just analyze this for a second. Let's say he had the right idea. Right. The right idea being he wants to see what's going on. Right. He wants to see what's going on. Very good. What's the problem? Problem is not allowed to. No one's allowed there to see. If no one's there allowed to see, then the punishment can be very severe. Called misplaced devotion. We see a similar thing, even though I think it's much more detailed what potentially they might have done wrong. We spoke about this a lot, and that was the sin of Nadav and Avihu. When you look at the sin of Nadav and Avihu, right, it seems pretty clear. Either they brought incense where they weren't allowed to, right? In the Holy of Holies, you're only allowed to bring incense on the day of Yom Kippur. Or they drank wine before they served. Different reasons. There are a lot of other different reasons the Gemara potentially gives. But also, in a certain way, is misplaced devotion. Why is it misplaced devotion? Very simple, because there are certain things you're allowed to do, you're not allowed to do. Over here, it was an auspicious time. The temple, the Mishkan, the tabernacle is being erected. So all the pieces are being put together, a tremendously auspicious time. So they were tremendously devoted to God. And they said, it's such a great time. Let us take this incense and bring it into the Holy of Holies. What's the problem? What's the obvious problem? Obvious problem is they're not allowed to. It's only one day a year. The high priest is allowed to bring the incense in the Holy of Holies. What day is that? Yom Kippur. Well, didn't they know? They knew. But why did they think it was okay? Why did they think it was okay? They thought it was okay because it was an auspicious time. But God didn't command them to do it. So, even though they're at a very high level over here, they did it for the sake of heaven. They had no ulterior motives. Some say they might have been greater even than Moses and Aaron, or as we spoke about. Regardless, it's misplaced devotion in a certain way. Very hard to understand. Right? Extremely hard to understand. We don't know who these people are. Can't imagine who these people are and how great they are. They didn't realize, they weren't commanded. They weren't allowed to do this. Right? Very hard to understand. So we spoke about that. We spoke about that in depth many moons ago. Find all those classes at the beginning of chapter 16, either on my YouTube channel at Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, the Book of Leviticus Chapter 16, or on my Facebook page at either Michael Chaim Kaufman or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on Facebook. So here's misplaced devotion. Totally misplaced devotion. Nonetheless, they named it after him. They called it the house apartment. Says Rashi further, therefore, all four immersions, when the high priest went from linen clothing to gold clothing and vice versa. Why does that happen? Right? It happens because specific obligation of the day of Yom Kippur. And they were done in the house, the parvit. That's where it was. In other words, that's where the Kohen Gadol, that's where the high priest immersed. But the first immersion, which was done every day, not on Yom Kippur, Rashi says, That took place in an unconsecrated area. Right? So the Medrash says, and brought down by in the Talmud Yuma 31a, that the immersion that preceded the Kohen Gadol's entry into the courtyard in the morning took place in the mikvah gate on the roof of one of the gates of the courtyard. What was that called? It's called the Sharamayim, the gate of water. And this area was not consecrated, right? It was not mekudash like this area of the house of Parva. So all these other immersions took place in the house of Parva. The first one, no. First one, Rashi says, did not. It didn't take place there. Right? So they say there took place in some unconsecrated area. Now, interesting, Rashi says, and he uses the Hebrew over here, he says, Haisa Bechol, took place in an unconsecrated area. Chol means every day. Literally means like every day. An unconsecrated area. There are other additions, just point this out there. There are other additions that in Rashi doesn't say Bechol. It says Bechel. What does it mean, Bechel? It means in the Chil. What does it mean? The Chil was a 10-armah wide band around the courtyard walls. Right? That was demarcated by a low fence. So it was a wide stretch around the courtyard, around the walls. There was a low fence, right? There's a low fence there. And interesting enough, the Gemara, the Medrash does not make any mention whatsoever of a mikveh in this area. In the mikveh, in the Chil. But we noticed, we said before, the Gemara and the Medrash say the first immersion took place when on the roof of the gate of the water, not consecrated. Right? So there's no question over here. Tonight, we all agree, everyone agrees over here, that's an unconsecrated area. The only question is, was it in a place where the chel was? That's the question. Why? Why is there a question on it? There's a question because it doesn't seem to be a source to say there was a mikveh in that area. Right? So then the whole question. There's a whole question over here. Was it there or wasn't it? Right? Bottom line, everyone agrees it's an unconsecrated area. Okay. Now the question is, was it in this place called the Chel or not? It would seem problematic over here because there's no source to say there was a mikveh there. That's one thing. Then the Torah says that he donned his garments. Which garments? Right? It doesn't say. But here Rashi says the 8 garments in which he serves all the days of the year. Right? These were garments of gold. Right? So all the days of the year he serves in gold. Now, in Yom Kippur, certain times he's going to switch. He's going to switch into linen. And then he goes out. Where did he go out from? He goes out from the sanctuary. Rashi says to the courtyard, where the altar and the burnt offerings are going to be. All right, so there's no question over here. The Torah says, he shall go out. Here it means going out of the sanctuary. Right, but if you look in, we'll go back a drop. You look in verse 18. Verse 18, it says, you go out to the altar, that's before Hashem, make atonement upon it, take the blood of the bull from the blood of the he-goat, place on the horns of the altar, etc. Now, over there, we went out something else, Rashi says. It says that he went out to the altar before God, which is what? The golden altar in the sanctuary. So then, if he goes out, that's where he goes. Why does the Torah say he shall go out? Meaning, seeming to say he's going to go out of the sanctuary. So there's a whole different thing. So there Rashi says he sprinkled sprinkling on the covering of the ark, and then he stood in that area and went on the gold altar. blah, blah, blah. The whole different thing going on. Right? The whole different thing going on over there. So we're just pointing out that here Rashi says it goes out from the sanctuary, but use the same terminology. Right? The Torah uses the same terminology in verse 18. Right? Very good. Same terminology. Okay. Totally different context. Totally different context. So one of the commentaries asks, what's the difference? So he says, go back to see what Rashi says. See what Rashi says in verse 18. Totally different context. Then the Torah says, and he offers his own Ola offering, and Ola offering again, a totally burnt offering, because it refers to the phrases and the ram for an Ola offering. That's stated in the above verse, right? In verse 3. And what's he going to bring? He's going to bring a ram for this burnt offering. And then it says, with this shall Aaron come into the sanctuary. And that's what he's going to bring in, right? But again, he's going out. He's going out of the sanctuary. Then he's going to bring in this ram for this burnt offering. And the last thing is, what about the burnt offering for the people? What is that referring to? Talking about one ram for an oil offering, Rashi says, right? Which is stated above as being for the assembly of the children of Israel. That's verse 5, right? You go back to verse 5. Go back to verse 5 here. What does it say in verse 5? If I find it here, verse 5 says, from the assembly of the children of Israel shall take 2 he-goats for a sin offering, 1 ram for an oil offering. Okay? Right, so he's going to take this ram. He's going to use this ram as the burnt offering for the Jewish people, right, for the entire nation. So he's going to bring one ram for himself, right, for his family. He's going to bring 1 ram for everybody else, right? And that's a reference to what we said before, right? That's what it's coming from, right? So explains Rashi over here. Now, one thing I want to point out, and that is that the Sforno, one of the great commentaries, the Sforno over here says at the end of this verse, it says going to atone for him and for the people, meaning for him, his household, and the people. Right, so comes along the Sforno, and he says, what's going to atone for? Right, what's going on? What's going on over here? He says it's atonement for Huri Alev. What's Huri Alev? Huri Alev means he's got bad thoughts in his heart. Right, thoughts to do bad things. Right, so therefore, this offering is going to come to atone for that. Now, what would be the obvious question? What would be the obvious question over here? Obvious question is, Devarim shebalev eno devarim. Words in my heart don't mean anything. So what I have to worry about what I think in my heart. Torah is all about action. Mentioned this last time, Perkei Avos. Right? I spoke about ethics of our fathers. That we read yesterday. We read yesterday in the Torah that God gave the Torah to Jewish people. Right? Exodus chapter 20. Right? Anochi Hashem Elokecha. We start with the 10 Commandments. I'm the Lord your God. Took you out of the house of bondage. Took you out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. But the Torah continues, and the Torah says what the Jewish people say. What the Jewish people say, they said, Nasev and Ishma, we will do, then we will hear. So it's about action. So we mentioned, I'm not going to go through this whole thing because I spoke about it a lot yesterday, right? And that is, people say, Jews will say, how could I ever take on to do something, some mitzvah, whatever? I don't fully understand it. And my question would be, and if you did really fully understand it, you'll make excuses. You'll say, I don't like this reason for it, I don't like that reason for it. The example I gave was somebody gave a number of years ago. sweaters to my kids during the winter. And in sweaters, it said 100% wool. Now, for a Jew, if it says 100% wool, got to get checked. Why? Might be linen in there. Not allowed to wear wool and linen. Torah says, right? That's the Torah prohibition of what we call shotness. You're not allowed, a Jew's not allowed to wear wool and linen in one garment. Meaning, if you have a sweater, right? If you have a sweater, you can have wool and linen in it. If you have a suit jacket, you can't have wool and linen in it. Right? Pants cannot have wool and linen in it. If I had a wool suit and there's no linen in it, and I had linen pants, not a problem. Because they're not the same garment. Right? It has to be in the same garment. So it's a total prohibition of what we call shotness. So I said to this person, very nice, thank you for the gift. Problem is, I have to get it checked. Probably not a problem, right? I have to get it checked for shotness. So they said, what's that? I explained to them. A Jew's not allowed to wear wool and linen together. Okay. Right. So they asked me why. So I said, I'm not sure. Right. We don't necessarily know why. I mean, a lot of the mitzvahs, we don't necessarily know why. But this is what we call a chok. It's a law, it doesn't make sense. Right. The law doesn't make rational sense. A lot of the Torah, probably 80%, maybe doesn't make sense or rational sense. But, there are certain things that are totally illogical, right? Totally illogical. This is definitely one of them, right? It's illogical. So I said, we don't really know. The person said, well, why would I want to keep it? If there's no reason for it. I said, so let me ask you. I said, if I came up with 10 reasons, would you do it? They said, depends. What does it depend on? What I think. Does it resonate with me? It doesn't resonate with me. I said, yeah, I could give you 10 different reasons. You can knock them all off. You can say, I don't like this one. I don't like that one. I don't like the other one. Right? For the Jewish people, it doesn't matter. Right? We're not like the Christians say, oh, it's a leap of faith. No. Exodus chapter 20. Right? Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I'm the Lord your God. How do you know? Not a leap of faith. Because God took you out of Egypt. God intervenes in history. Only nation in the world that makes such a claim that 3 million people saw God at Mount Sinai. Christians don't make such a claim. The Muslims don't make such a claim. No other religion makes such a claim. And they agree that happened to us. Now they'll say we're not the chosen anymore, different things. Okay. But they agree 600,000 men between the age of 20 and 60, not including women and children, came out of Egypt. That's about 2 to 3 million people. Right, give or take. So no one's making such a claim. No one else is making such a claim. So we have a claim that's based on what? That's based on God intervening in history. Right, and everyone agrees we were there. There's a lot of proof to show that that the Jewish people were in Egypt. Right, okay. So my point is that it's not about what I think. Right, as we mentioned many times, God does not care one iota what I think, what anybody else thinks. Question is, he gave the Torah, what do I have to do? What are my obligations? Right? So it's not you leave your brain outside, that's for Christians. Right? We have to understand the Torah to the best of our ability. But you just said 80% of the Torah doesn't make logical sense. Doesn't make logical sense. Do I throw my brains out the window? No. I have an obligation to the best of my ability to understand it. And I have to learn it. And there are certain things, guess what? There are certain things that make no sense. The ultimate thing that doesn't make any sense, the red heifer. What was the red heifer? They took this cow, that was red, never worked, never used. And if someone became impure, they would burn the cow, take the ashes, Cohen would take the ashes, sprinkle it on the person. Now what would happen? That person would become pure. The Cohen would be impure. Makes no sense. No sense. So the smartest of all men, King Solomon himself, said that he had a little bit difficult understanding. Everything else he understood. That he didn't, he didn't quite get. Wasn't going to say for the rest of us. So we call that a chok. It's a law we don't understand. Right? It's a law that does not make any sense at all. Other things we can try and make sense of. Right? But the point is, the person wants to convert, and I would say even a Jew by birth, the most important thing besides knowing what you have to do is why. What's the purpose of what I do? Right? Because the person could be sitting there right before Shabbos comes in and they're busy ripping toilet paper and different things. And say, hey, why am I doing this? But they forget the bigger picture. They forget why I'm doing it. They forget what the purpose is. And at the end of the day, I have to understand to the best of my ability. And some things you're never going to understand. Right? Think of the red heifer. We can try. Right? I'm not saying you give up. Right? But there's certain things we're not going to get clarity. Right? We have to understand what to do and how it works and all that. But there are certain things that don't make any sense at all. Right? You still have to keep it. Right now, that doesn't mean I'm throwing my brains away, because other things do make sense. Right? And not only that, there's proof for why I do things. And the fact that there is a God, he runs the world and all that. There are a lot of proofs, right? Well, that's not the point here. But the idea is, comes on this foreknown, he says, oh, you're going to bring the sacrifice. You're going to bring this burnt offering. Guess what? This burnt offering is atoning for bad thoughts. Whatever these bad thoughts are. They're atoning for bad thoughts. So we just got through saying Judaism is all about action. It's not about necessarily what I think. But guess what? There are certain things that Jew can get punished by, wouldn't apply to a non-Jew, that a Jew can get punished by even by thinking, without even actualizing. One of them is by idolatry. One of them is by immorality. Right? So if a person saw things he shouldn't see, but he didn't act on it, or she didn't act on it, because they was a big deal. Didn't do anything wrong. Ah, come along. The rabbis tell you no. Even though you didn't act on it, you would tell me if I acted on it, it'd be forbidden. Right. If you didn't act on it, is it forbidden? Sure, it's forbidden. Now, certain things you're not allowed to see, you're not allowed to look at. Even if you didn't perform the action, whatever it is, by idolatry, no difference. If a Jew said in his mind, and there are definitely strong opinions like this, if a Jew in their mind says, JC is my God, or they say, sure, little fat guy, Mr. Buddha himself, they're not calling him fatso, but okay. They'll say, Mr. Buddha himself is my God in his mind. He didn't say it outright. He didn't bow. He didn't do any idolatrous action per se. They'd be liable for a death penalty. But what the person do, they said it in their minds. So you're going to say, Devarim shebalev devarim. Words in my heart don't mean anything. If words in my heart don't mean anything, why are you going to crush him over here? Why should he get death penalty? Or maybe not. Or he's going to be in big trouble. He didn't do anything. There's no action. Right? Come on, the commentators and say, guess what? You're right. There's no action. No action's been done. But it's such a severe prohibition. It's such a severe prohibition, even if you don't open your mouth. But that's what you thought. You're liable for your thoughts. Now, many, many things, a person is not going to be liable for their thoughts. Right? They're not going to be liable for their thoughts. If, let's say, person walking down the street, someone comes in front of them, not dressed appropriately, not your fault, totally not your fault. That's the way they dress, right? You saw them, just transgressed. No. If a person, started thinking different things, that's when they transgress. If they're working hard to get it out of their minds and they're not thinking about it, they don't transgress. Right? But you're going to say, but it happened. You saw something, okay? Just because you saw it doesn't necessarily mean 100% is transgression here. If a person thought about it and this and that, okay, that's a different issue. That's a different issue. Right? If a person works hard to get it out of their head, they don't transgress. But the point over here is that a person's thoughts can be held against them, even if they don't act on it. A person can have heretical thoughts. Now, you tell me, let's say, person has doubts. Person has, and I've gotten this question before, many different ways, but bottom line question comes up, and that is that, what if I have doubts about God? What if I have doubts about God? Do I transgress? Does a person, not me, does a person transgress? Does a person transgress? If they're looking for answers, and they go through a difficult time, does that mean we have to work on our emunah? Sure. We always have to work on strengthening our faith and belief in God, right? We can put in different situations. It's hard. Someone dies suddenly or in a tragic way, or, other, people have upheavals, let's say financially, other things. There are things that can drive a person over the edge, right? It's not, they're just difficult things, difficult things to deal with. So that being the case, a person could say, right, we'll make it easy. Someone who survived the Holocaust. Someone who survived the Holocaust, and they have major doubts about God's existence. Maybe they're religious before, they're not religious now. They don't even want to admit they're Jewish. Can we have a claim against them? Never. We can have a claim. We know what they went through. Seeing family get killed in front of their eyes, we can't compare. We can't say anything. Right? I remember one of the great rabbis said, you want a blessing, go get a blessing from somebody. It's got a number tattooed to them. They're the ones that if their faith and belief is still intact, they're the ones get a blessing from because of all the terrible things they saw. So I remember I was speaking somewhere in the States, and after I spoke, there was a woman there. I was talking about reincarnation and the fact that reincarnation is a Jewish concept and different things. So this woman comes up to me afterward, a much older woman, and she's like, Rabbi, you're very, very clever. You're very, very clever. And she went on to tell me, the horrors she went through as a child during the Holocaust. So what was the only thing I could do? Just listen. There's nothing for me to say. What am I going to say? Maybe, there's so much intermarriage assimilation. All your relatives deserve to be killed because of that. They're not going to hear that. We don't even know if that's 100% the reason. Could be one reason. Unless I mean it's the reason. But there's not an answer here. She's not looking for an answer. She's venting. So there was a person there, that wanted to try to explain to her. I just pushed him out of the way. I'm just like, let her talk. Just leave her. Right? Somebody like that, if they have major doubts about the fact that God exists and holding at least somewhere in the world, leave him be. Because you can't judge a person unless you've been in their shoes. Unless you've been in their shoes. You can be angry at them. You can have claims against them. But the reality is you can't say boo. You cannot say boo unless you've been inside their shoes. Now, I'm not saying what they did is right. Let's say someone did something wrong. Whatever it is. Whatever it is. Now, if it's something egregious, again, we're not justifying wrong action. Let's get that straight. I don't want anyone, certainly misquoting me and say, oh, see, anyone does anything wrong, can't judge them until you've been in their shoes. No. Somebody does something wrong, they're guilty. There's no question. They're guilty. Now, they could have excuses. They could say, I meant to do this or I meant to do that, but it never happened, or got sidetracked, forgot, whatever. They can make up excuses. Now, what are excuses? Excuses could be legitimate things. They could be definitely legitimate things. Someone got wrong, that doesn't matter, right? To them, it's not going to matter because they got messed up because of you. Okay, right? That might be true. That very well may be true. It doesn't mean the person did something right over here. Person, person did something wrong. For everybody, person did something wrong. Doesn't have to be so egregious, right? Cause someone damage, however they cause them damage. Now, if that's true, then they hammer that person for what they did. Okay. That person probably deserves it, right? If a person had proper faith, they say, well, maybe this is supposed to happen anyway. I'm not saying you have to be a shmata, you have to be a dish rag over here. But if something happens to a person, says the Chovos Levavos, Says the Chos of Avos and duties of the heart. It was coming to you. He's just the messenger, or she's just the messenger. So why, a person runs out, a person hits a dog with a stick. Not that I'm saying you should. Who does the dog go after? The stick, not the one wielding the stick, as we always say. So the one who's wielding the stick, that's the one you go after. So, somebody's texting while they're driving, go through a stoplight, bam, hit your car. Okay, cause damage, you're okay. Whatever, the car's going to get fixed. What's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to get out of the car and you're going to scream at the person. Because you saw them at the corner of their eye with their face in the screen and they hit your car. Right? So the first thing is, after you get over the initial shock, you're running over there screaming at them left and right. Right? Says the Chos of Avos, students of the heart, Shar Bitachon, in the gate of Emunah. No, wrong. That's the wrong attitude. Really, you should go up to them and hug them. I don't know anyone who's holding by this, but he said you should go up there and hug them. Why? Why do you go up there and hug them? You want to say, I want to thank you very much for helping me work on my anger. I want to thank you for putting me in this situation, because obviously this was coming to me. Damage was supposed to come to me, and you're the vehicle. No pun intended. You're the messenger. You're the one who was supposed to cause it. Very good. Is he guilty? Oh, yeah. His insurance is going to have to pay if he's got insurance or she has insurance. Nothing to talk about. They're guilty. But at the end of the day, you had it coming. You had it coming. Why? I don't know. Could be a million reasons. Could be a million reasons why they had it coming. All right. But the first thing we're going to do is yell and scream at the other person. Now, again, is the other person guilty? They're guilty. 100% they're guilty. And even if they're guilty, and a person is caused damage through them, you can say it's not fair, it's not right, they should have done this, they should have done 100 other things. True. Maybe it's all true. You believe in God, you don't believe in God. They're guilty, it's charged, nothing to talk about. Not arguing that point. They are guilty 100% is charged. So why did it happen? Why did this person have to take a loss? You know why this person had to take a loss? Because God decreed they had to take a loss for different sins that they've done. They don't want to admit that. They're going to say, you caused me damage. True. But what's the Torah outlook? What's the Torah outlook? The Torah outlook is, okay, this person was the messenger. Are they guilty? 100%. 100% they're guilty. They can make 100 excuses, doesn't matter. They're guilty. Now, on the other hand, someone's taking a loss, right? They're taking a loss. Isn't that divinely decreed? They're going to take a loss? It's divinely decreed. Why? Why is it divinely decreed? Because of sins that they did. That's why it happened. The only thing is, this person's a messenger. Good. That person's a messenger, and they got messed up in different ways. And then you're screaming at them, even if they deserve it. Guess what? You're not in their shoes. You're not in their shoes. How can you judge? How can you judge? That's the Torah outlook, but people don't look at it that way. People are going to say it's your fault, right? It's your fault. Should have done this, should have done that. You were negligent, okay? Right? Not denying the point. Not denying the point. There's a bigger picture. There's a bigger picture. When we fail to look at the bigger picture, everything is, oh, it's his fault, it's their fault, it's our fault. Nobody says I have it coming to me. Nobody ever makes such a claim. I've never heard it. But you'll say, come on, you didn't deserve this. You did something to help someone and you got burned. Okay? It can happen. But why'd you get burned? Why'd you get burned? Why'd you have to go through this? All right. Now, what's the possible reason? One possible reason. God says, I want you to suffer over here. I want to take a bite out of you a little bit, and that person's going to be the messenger. But you can never judge anyone. It doesn't matter. You can't judge anyone unless you've been in their shoes. Now, if someone does something egregious, we're not going to go that far. Someone murdered someone in cold blood. So I could say, well, I guess the person deserved to die. God took them in that way. That's a Torah outlook. Doesn't matter how they died, right? And some people can die in horrific ways, right? They're just what do you call it? Tragedy here in Israel. Bunch of people killed on Friday. Car ramming into people. Again, I'm not going to go and console somebody and say, well, that was their time to go. It's a hard thing. It's a very hard thing. No question. But in the bigger picture, once a person seems to get, I'm not going to say get over the tragedy, but once a person seems to look beyond, and sees the bigger picture, we don't know. King Solomon already says in Proverbs, nobody knows what today's going to bring. Nobody knows what tomorrow's going to bring. His father, King David, said, we've been having this world normally 70 years. Anything, if a person has strength, he gets 80 years. Anything over that's a bonus, right? But who says a person's going to live out their life? How do we know a person's not going to die in a car accident 25? How do we know a child, God forbid, is not going to die in crib death? You're going to say, play the odds. What are the odds the child dies in crib death? Probably not so high. It happens. I don't know exactly what the stats are. I think they're higher than I think, right? It definitely happens. It can happen for any number of reasons. It doesn't matter. But you know what the main reason is? Because God took this child. The main reason is this soul had to be in this world for a couple of years. And then it had to get fixed up by being in this body. And then God just took it and it fulfilled whatever it needed to fulfill. And that's it. I'll tell you a scary story. I like scary stories. I'll tell you a scary story. There's a story of a woman comes to the Arizal, Rav Isaac Luria, blessed memory. And she goes to him for a blessing to have a child. She had a child many, many years. Never had children. Right? Many, many, many years. So the Arizal finally gives her a blessing. And he says, you're gonna have a child, you're gonna have a boy. And he says, I have to be the sandak for this child. So he says, when you have the boy, you tell me when you have the boy, and I have to be the one to hold the baby at the bris, at the circumcision. It's a kind of strange thing. If you think about it, it says not only going to have a boy, she has had children for years and years, but not only going to have a child, you're going to have a boy. And when you have a boy, I'm going to be the one to hold the baby. A little bit strange. Okay. What happened? This woman ends up conceiving and eventually has a boy. A year later, she has a boy. She runs to Rav Isaac Luria, tells him, says, great. He says, I need to be the sandik, whatever. He says, fine. Comes the bris, comes the day of the bris, circumcision, a whole big thing. Woman never gave birth before. Whole big thing. So, bring out the child. The child goes on the lap of Rav Isaac Luria, of the Arizal. Circumcision is done. Everybody's so happy. It's a beautiful thing. A lot of words of Torah at the bris, at the meal, the circumcision, everything's great. What happens? A week later, the baby dies. A week later. I think that's the way the story goes. A week later, the baby dies. This woman totally distraught, as you could imagine. Totally 100% distraught. She comes to Arizal in tears. She's like, what in the world is going on here? I didn't have a child for so many years. You tell me I'm going to have a child. I'm going to have a boy. You have to be sandak. You have to hold the baby at the bris. And then the baby dies a week later. He said, what's going on? So the Arizal says, okay, I'll tell you. I'll tell you the full story. He said, I understood there was a soul that had to come into this world. And this soul that had to come into this world, there was one thing it was lacking. One thing it was lacking in order to reach its true perfection in the next world. What was that? This child never saw the face of a righteous person. Now, he's not bragging. Right? Make no mistake. Rav Isaac Luria is not one to tell a story just to say, oh, look how righteous I am. Look how holy I am. He's telling, this is what happened. So he tells the woman, listen, This soul had to come into the world. You were the conduit to bring in the soul. The one thing the soul did not see in this world, right, was what? Did not see a righteous person. He never seen a truly righteous person. I don't know what he saw before. He didn't tell any that part of the story. He never saw a righteous person in his life. Right? So I needed to be there in order to hold the baby, in order for the baby to see me. After that, the baby's message, whatever it was doing in this world, that was it. It was finished. So a week later, the baby died, had no more purpose in the world. So I would say you hear a story like that, quarter of a consolation. Maybe a tenth of a consolation. But we have no idea. Some people fulfill what they need to do, in 95 years. Some people do it in 60 years. Some people do it in 30 years. That their soul comes to this world and they're taken away, and seemingly people will say too young. Too young. I heard this when I was in the States. My father's mother passed away before I was born. I was named after her. Kind of funny. A guy being named after a woman. Her name was Chaya. So my Hebrew name is Chaim. Basically the same root of the word. Same, means the same thing. Means the exact same thing. Right? So she died in her early 60s. Early 60s. Right? Person died that young. Right? Today's day and age where people die, people die much later. They live longer lives. Certainly live longer lives in many ways. So that's, people say that's a tragedy. Right? That's a terrible thing. Or God forbid, you hear people dying even younger. Let's say people, God forbid, have cancer, die in their 40s or die in their 30s. It's just a tragedy. And forget where it was, some Caribbean island where this a Bavarian woman to save her child drowning, and she herself died in the process. Number of months, she ended up dying also, 40 years old, 7 kids. We don't understand. We have no idea. One of the things my Rebbe says, why do people die young and old? They die young and old because if everyone died at the same age, no one would repent. So there are things we don't understand. You have 2 children, brothers, 8 and 6. Got mauled over here, totally mauled. Who's to say that there should have been a tragedy of 10,000 people that should have been killed, or 20,000, 50,000 people? So what did God do? He said, I'm going to take these 2. They're not guilty. They're underage. Right? It's not about punishment over here. But it's something, whatever, their soul had to come into this world, and that's what happened. But it could have stopped major tragedies. And to give another example, in Harnof, where I learned at least 3 times a week, there was a tragedy about 8 years ago. 4 very righteous people were killed in a horrific way. Axed, whatever. I don't even want to go into it. A horrific way. Right? In the morning by prayers in the morning. So, you're not talking just average people here, right? Here you're talking about, cream of the crop people. So God sometimes picks roses in order to avoid greater tragedy. Now, what does that mean? It means God could have made a decree that really 100,000 Jews or 70,000 Jews, or put a number on it, whatever it is, could have been a much greater tragedy, much greater. God says, Jewish people deserve a lot of punishment, so God had mercy them. Why is it mercy? Because God took 4 stars, 4 roses, and he said, I'm going to take them instead of 50,000. Now, someone's going to ask, if that's true, weren't these people put in this world to suffer? No. That's a Christian idea. They weren't here sin for everyone else. The fact that they died sanctifying God's name, killed for the sake of the fact that they were Jews, right? So, we don't have to worry about where they are in the next world. They got a very high position in the next world. That is no question. The families left behind, that's tragic. So, that is nothing to talk about. right? But I'm just saying, I'm pointing out, it could very well be, there could have been something much greater down the line that could have happened. And God said, I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'll do this. Now, what would we sign up for? Neither. We say, we don't want either one. We don't have that choice. It's tragic. I'm not going to say tragic. I'm not saying dancing to, oh, look, they got to a high position in heaven. They could have stopped the other great tragedy. We're not, you're not going to go to a mourner's house and say that. You're going to get slapped, if not thrown out on your, on your head, which you would deserve if you said that. I'm just saying, if you look at the bigger picture in some way, we can't make sense out of tragedy. Can't. It's impossible. It's impossible. We say, okay, we have to try this. We have to be stricter with people coming into the country and different things or whatever. Okay, we can try different things. Is there a way to stop it? No, certainly not in this country. There's no way to stop anything, except if God wants it to stop. If God doesn't want tragedy, there won't be. Right? 100%, there won't be. But these are wake-up calls. And, this is not the first time it's happened. 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, Saturday nights, when I flew to the States, that Friday, that Friday night, people were killed coming out of synagogue. It's mind blowing. People say, hey, everyone should carry a gun. And okay, different ideas what people think. Good. But my point is there any way to really stop it? No. You can try, but you're not going to stop it, right? Unless God wants it stopped. But this is a wake-up call. We don't understand. We totally don't understand, right? But at the end of the day, it's a wake-up call. God wants something over here. He wants us to be better, right? He wants us to pray better. He wants our actions between us, and our fellow man to be better. He wants us to serve him better. A lot of things, we need to work on. Especially, my Rebbe pointed out, if something happened on Shabbos, then there's something wrong with observance of Shabbos over here. In other words, measure for measure. Someone's killed on Shabbos, in such a way. So he wants to say measure for measure, there's something wrong with the observance of Shabbos. It's not just a random thing. That's Amalek. We don't believe in random things, right? So again, when it comes to the families and the tragedy that they suffer, I'm not going to say it's going to console anybody. I'm just saying, how should we view it? Tragedy we don't understand. But remember one thing. We die because of sins. Sin of Adam Arishon and Chava, the sin of Adam and Eve. That brought death to the world. Never should have happened. God went to plan B. So someone's going to say, come on, didn't God understand it was going to happen? Sure. Right? We're not going to go there, free will. That's a whole different discussion. But there's death in the world. Now, does it matter how someone dies? I remember saying once, as my Rebbe's son once, someone passed away and I asked him how they died. What happened? So what do you care? He died. Doesn't matter how. The Abraham took him. God took him. That's it. But what happens? We all get caught up in things where things happen out of the blue, out of the ordinary, right? Suddenly, right? That's more tragic. True. It's not expected. Totally not expected. So, or a person dies, let's say, in the prime of their life, or young. It's hard to make sense. I don't think there's any question. Right? I don't think there's any question. Someone there points out this woman died, she had 13 kids. Yeah, it's tragic. It's tragic. I can't say anything else. But at the end of the day, we don't know why things happen. We have no idea. The question is how we view it in the bigger scheme of things. When we see senseless murder, it's much harder to understand. When you understand Esav hates Yaakov, and the Arabs, all they want to do is kill us. That's all they want to do. And the fact that we're still in the land is an absolute miracle. There's no question about it. Not that I'm raising my Israeli flag here, going, da, 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 forget it. I'm not saying I'm a Zionist per se, but at the end of the day, they're going to be a thorn in our side till the Messiah comes. They have a certain merit in this land. All right, according to the Zohar, I'll just throw this out there. How old was Ishmael? Throw this out there. Final Jeopardy question. How old was Ishmael, when he was circumcised? Answer, what is 13? Right? So the Zohar says that Ishmael had a certain power in the land of Israel for 1,300 years. Right? Zohar says he got 100 years for every year he was on this, that at that time he was alive. 13 years. 1,300 years. So 1,300 years, it's just about up right now. I think it's over actually. But they had some sort of power, over the land, over a certain amount, over that amount of time. And that being the case, we do understand that the way it looks right now, if we look at, I'm not going to get political here because I never do, but if you look at what's going on right now, what do we see? We see that their goal, 100%, wipe us out. All their books talk about, Jews should be destroyed, should be thrown out. The land belongs to them, blah, blah, blah. All this, right? They're just waiting, bloodthirsty like no tomorrow. They're just waiting till when they can kill all of us. You're going to say, no, you're being biased. Come live here, come see. That's what's going on. 100%, that's what they're being taught. And that's what's going on. I was reminiscing a little bit. As I was coming back on the bus, there's an Arab village, right? Not far from where I live. So there's a big sign at the entrance to the Arab village. It's in Hebrew and it's in English, and it says that this area belongs, it's under the guidance of the Palestinian Authority. Okay, right? Let's say. So it's under the guidance of the Palestinian Authority. No Israeli should drive through here for danger of death. Because it's going to be dangerous to your health. Where I live, there are 2,000 Arabs every day coming in to work. Whether they're building, working in, supermarkets, other places, you can't even walk into their area. You walk into an area that belongs to them, you're as good as dead. You're good as dead as an Israeli, nothing to talk about. There are a number of times, people going somewhere on ways, end up in an Arab village, almost get lynched. Happens, unfortunately, it happens. Happened a number of times. Some people more fortunate, some people less fortunate. Why should that be? They can walk around us, they can go on our buses, they can do almost anything. They got, free reign, so to speak. But a Jew doesn't have that right. An Israeli doesn't have that right. You walk in their territory, because they're going to tell you, you put your life at risk. And if they kill you, it's not our fault. It's not our fault. Then you read the sign, don't go into these areas. Boy, it's a good thing we want to make peace with them. Right? You don't see in any Israeli areas, Arabs not allowed. Okay, maybe there are checkpoints, different places, fine. But they don't say they're not allowed. Otherwise, it's going to be dangerous to their health. Maybe they should. They're not going to believe it, right? But maybe they should. That's insanity. They can go on our buses. They can do all these things, walk around like they own the place. And you can't walk into their territory. You can't walk into a village. It's going to be like dangerous to your health. Now, some places I would say, you would never step foot in because they're known to be a hotbed of violence. Other places, let's say I would say more power in a certain way, that okay, probably, nothing's going to happen. But you got signs up there for a reason. Why did God do this? Why did he put so many of them in one place? Because he's got a plan. We're not privy to what the information is. But he's got a final plan. They're going to be part of that plan one way or another. That's the way it looks. Right? If you look at Zechariah chapter 14, Zechariah chapter 14 says it's going to be a war of Gog and Magog. Right? So the Malbim more than 100 years ago, his commentary says, guess what? Who's Gog and Magog? That's Edom against Ishmael. Who's Edom? The Western world, i.e., i.e. you got America, South America, Australia, North America, etc. Who's Yishmael? The Muslims. Now, before 9/11, you would say no such thing. What? You're going to have this group of Muslims going to fight against Edom? So the Malbim says, why are they going to fight against each other? It's going to be a bloodbath because they have differences of opinion in religion. Oh, right. The Muslims say, if you're not like us, we'll kill you. Pretty simple, right? And you see there are Muslim minorities all over the world, especially in Europe. You go against them, you do something wrong, they'll shut down the place. Happened in France a number of years ago. France, not a third world country, last time I checked. Took them 3 weeks. 3 weeks to put it down. Nobody wants to start up with it. Nobody. Now, says the Malbim further, it's going to be a major bloodbath. They have differences of opinion when it comes to religion. Very good. And then they're going to say, hey, why are we fighting against each other? Whose fault is it? Of course, the Jews' fault. It's all our fault. So what do? They say, we're going to march on Jerusalem. We're going to fight against the Jews. That's when the Messiah comes. That's the beginning of the end. That's what the Malbim said. Now, before 9/11, you would think he's crazy. You'll say maybe he smoked something a little bit too much. He's off his rocker. Where's he getting this information from? Muslims don't have that kind of power. There's only one country in the world, just throw this out there. One country in the world, there's no problem with Muslims today. That is Japan. You know why Japan doesn't have any problems? Because they don't let them in. They don't allow Muslims come in. That's it. They don't have a problem. So that's one opinion. There's a medrash says if there's going to be a war of Gog and Magog, some say there won't be a war. World War I, World War II took care of that. It's going to be really a spiritual war. Let's say, but if there would be a war, it's going to start with the king of Paras. Where's Paras today? Right? Paras is Iran. Now that makes sense. Who knows what's going to happen, with them. So, could it happen that way? It could. Could it happen the Malbim's way? It could. What's the bottom line? The world's a pressure cooker. World a pressure cooker. What goes on here in Israel, the fact that, they're more, terrorist attacks happy now, than let's say before, it flares up, every so often. So I'm always fond of saying it could be 10 times worse. No Muslim should be listening to me, right? It could be 10 times worse. A number of years ago, they had people going on buses, stabbing people, trying to kill people. Right? Is there any way to stop that? No. They have a legal permit to be in the country, to be in the city, whatever it is. How can you stop it? If they wanted to paralyze the entire country, they can send hundreds up north, hundreds in the center, hundreds down south. No way to stop it. But it did stop. Right? So the government will say, yeah, it's because of the army. It's because of all the things we did. We infiltrated them. We got rid of a lot of their cells, all these, yeah. They're going to brag and say it's all because of us. No. Because according to nature, it should never stop. Why? Well, why all of a sudden stop? Because of weather? It's too cold. They don't like the cold. Why? Why should it stop? It stops for one reason. God wanted to stop. Right? That's the bottom line. Right? So our viewpoint, I see a bunch of questions here. I'll deal with it. The viewpoint over here is that we have to see, even when there's tragedy, I'm not going to, when a person dies, it's their time to go no matter what. Even if it happens in a tragic way, God is saying, I'm taking them now. Why? Why at that age? Why in that way? I can't answer. The only thing I can say is that's what that soul has to go through. And then everyone else around has to suffer through it. Why? Can't answer. Right? That we don't have answers. Right? Just like this woman who drowned, who died, trying to save her child. And now you got 13 kids. They're orphans. Very hard, very hard to understand. Very hard to fathom. It's 40 years old. Right? Very, very hard. A lot of other things I don't have to go through. Right? People understand. But again, it's a wake-up call. You're going to say a person should be more careful. A person, okay. But at the end of the day, King Solomon says you do not know what today is going to bring. You don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. If I don't know what today and tomorrow is going to bring, I better live my life the way I should every single day. I better try and raise myself to the highest level every single day, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. A person go to sleep and not wake up. That's what tomorrow could bring. You have no idea. A person can turn into paraplegic overnight. Get hit by a bus. Something happens. Right? It could be totally out of the ordinary. There's a story just read last night. Two girls here studying. Major rainstorm week and a half ago. Person lost control, rammed them. Died of their injuries. Tragic. Absolutely tragic. Right? There are a lot of things going on. Their wake-up call. No one should have to go through this. But at the same time, God's sending a message. You're going to say, well, be careful when you drive in the rain. Maybe that's part of the message. Maybe part of the message is don't take life for granted. Don't think, I'm young, I'm healthy, this, that, everything's going to go smooth. Don't think that. I'm not saying you got to be paranoid at the other extreme, right? You don't have to be paranoid over here. But, at the same time, you got to realize, and I'm not saying anything that no one else knows over here, right? That's not the claim. People are going to say, of course I know this. Of course I understand this. But you know what? I'm going to say something really controversial now. There's a God and he runs the world. And he does what he wants. And when we're not doing what we're supposed to do, what does God do? He knocks on the door. He wakes you up, shakes you around in order to see if you're awake or not. So some people will give a kvetch and say, oh, it's terrible, it's a tragedy, it's this, it's that. What can I do? Eat, drink, and marry, lest tomorrow I die. Okay? It's one way to look at it. Right? But when a person sees a tragedy, the Rambam says in the laws of fasting, right? If it was considered, if a person sees a tragedy, they're not moved by it, they're considered cruel. Now, again, doesn't mean you have to be paranoid. What it means over here is you got to be moved by what you see. You get it, your heart cannot be hard as a stone. Say, oh, that's terrible, that's this, and then you move on. Yeah, I have to move on anyway because you have to live. True. That's definitely true. At the same time, guess what? We have to wake up as well. We have to know. And again, this is not anything that nobody knows. The world is very fragile. Right? We see that certainly what's going on in the Middle East, going on other places. The world's extremely fragile. You don't know what's going to be. Life is scary the older, right? Anyone who's older, right? People will tell you if you get sick, it takes you longer to get over it, right? You're going to say, I don't want to hear that. I just want to get over it. But isn't it true? So we don't respond the same way. Our body takes a while to react, to come back to what it was. And the older a person is, the harder it is. Okay, that's true. Now, how do I view that? Do I say, well, that's just the way it is, and at the end of the day, you're gonna die anyway, so you just wait for that? Right? What's in the back of your mind? What's in the front of your mind? And there are some people, unfortunately, they're just in line waiting to die. They get to a certain age, all the friends around them see, not well, in the hospital, out of the hospital, some are better, some are worse, or God forbid, a lot of their friends no longer in this world. So death is facing them. They're staring at it right in the face. It's only a matter of when, but it could go on. They're just gonna say, well, I'm gonna live today. I'm not gonna live tomorrow, and whatever. But what are they doing with their lives? Playing cards? Bingo. I don't know, people still play bingo, right? Playing canasta, playing, bridge, playing whatever. Wasting life. What does God want? No matter what happens to a person, you have to serve him. You're obligated to serve him no matter how hard it is. Right? It's also controversial. But yeah, I went through this, I went through that, I went through that. Okay. You're right. So a person may need serious therapy to get over certain things. But you know what? Life is hard. We don't pick what we go through. Usually. Things are acted upon us. And the question is how we react. I heard certain things, I'm not gonna say what they were, but I heard certain things. When I was in the States and I had to judge people favorably, they didn't know the situation. They weren't saying things to be mean. Because I think if they would have known what the situation was, they would have opened their mouth. They just wouldn't have opened their mouth. Right? So it wasn't for me to say something because, I don't think they knew. I don't think they knew about certain situations. Okay. Did it sting a little bit? Yeah. I'm not going to say it didn't. I'm not going to say they did it on purpose. If they did it on purpose and they're totally insensitive, that's a different thing. But I'm pretty clear that they didn't, that they didn't. Otherwise, I would have probably flattened them like a pancake. But, I didn't have to do that because they probably didn't know. Right. But, at the same time, why do I mention that? Because there are things that a person has to go through that, you just don't know why. We don't have a clue why. It could be my soul I have to go through this. It could be, I don't know, any number of reasons. Went to see certain people and I knew when I walk in that door, I'm going to get hammered. I knew 100% what I was in for. Right? I walked in the door, bam. Oh, it's so good to see you. Bam, bam, bam. It was expected. I knew it was my cool. I knew it was coming. Definitely knew it was coming. And through some other things out, whatever. Okay. But it's coming from a good place, not necessarily a bad place. Right. But you're going to say, I had to put myself in a lion's den, to a certain extent. But yeah, it's what I had to do. I don't know, fixed up my soul. I don't know exactly. Whatever it was. I had what to say. I was very nice. I was very cordial. Everybody loved the fact I was there, participated in conversation. Didn't lose my cool at all. It was beautiful. Everyone had a good time. Right? This person's still digging. Okay. They're one of the few people I met that's actually alive. Everyone else, a lot of other people I met were brain dead. I don't think there's any question, but save some of those stories for another time. But the point is, I didn't choose this. I didn't choose to get harassed over here. But I saw where it's coming from. And some other people make some other statements. What am I going to do? I'm going to harp on every little thing? I could have said, there are plenty of things I could have said. Plenty. Right? I'm going to go. Why? First of all, the person's never going to listen anyway. Second of all, what's it going to accomplish? You're there to make a Kiddush Hashem. You're there to sanctify God's name. What are you going to do? Hammer them, even though you're right. See, we have that problem. We have a problem where, if we're wronged or someone says something, we have to prove we're right. We don't always have to prove we're right. I learned this the hard way. I learned it the hard way over the years. Should learn from my mistakes. All this evidence, whatever, I'm right, you're right. No, it's not going to go anywhere. They don't care. They're not going to ram it down their throat. They're not interested. Right? So even if you are right, doesn't matter. Sometimes you got to walk away. Sometimes, and even for me, it's hard. You got to keep your big mouth shut. I'm talking about me. I'm talking about myself. Me, myself, and I, all three of us. Right? Got to keep my mouth shut. That's what I did. That's what I did. I mean, some people open my mouth a little bit, but not too much. I wasn't that big of a righteous person. But okay, I opened my mouth a little bit. And 98% of the time, just let it roll. Let it roll. But don't you know you're right? Of course. There's no doubt. I don't have any doubt I'm right. So what? So what? Someone hammered me. I'll throw this out as an example. Someone hammered me. I was very nice because I know where it's coming from. But I mentioned this last night, Perkei Avos as well. I said, you must have a source. We must have multiple sources for what you're saying. Meanwhile, someone there was trying to be like the referee. I said, no, let her talk. It's fine. I don't have any issues over here. So, I'm game. Let me see let's see what's behind all the cards you have, right? So the person's playing with the deck, you're playing poker, all single digits. Got nothing. She got nothing but you're blowing smoke, angry about a certain thing. Okay, but it comes from, it comes out of love, not out of hate. But at the same time, they were bluffing. They didn't have anything. So I said very nicely, I said, okay, so you have sources? Show me. Be more than happy to discuss it. I love discussing philosophical issues, right? Most people probably be happy if I discuss more philosophical issues. Okay. Right. But let's discuss, like what's really, what do you have? What are your sources? Right. I could have been more obnoxious if I wasn't going to. So I said, show me. Maybe you have what to rely on. So the person said, it's all in my heart. That's what I think. That's what I believe in. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. That's what I think. You gonna argue with that? It's like the evil son in the Haggadah. You blunt his teeth. Why do you blunt his teeth? Because I'm not interested in an answer. So no matter what I would have said, it doesn't matter. They said you're a fanatic. That's the way you are. I'm ultra open-minded, so to speak. And that's it. You're the way you are, and I think you're a fanatic. Said it right to my face. I think you're a fanatic. Okay. But I said you're basing what you're saying on nothing. You got nothing to say, except I'm a fanatic. Okay. But show me a source, show me something. Right? Whatever. Tried to deflect it, someone else tried to deflect it, different things. And this person said, okay, I'm gonna continue to bug you until I change it. Okay. I'm a hard nut to crack. Good luck. Right? You want to bring me sources? Good. You want to hammer me? Okay. So they're going to say, okay, you put yourself in that situation. What did I need it for? You know what I needed it for? I think. I could be wrong. I needed to be in that situation. Work on my nerves, work on my calm. And make Kiddush Hashem. Make a sanctification of God's name. And I did. Got an A+. A+. Right? I'm not even giving myself anything less. That's the grade I'm giving myself. Right? I'm working my ego here a little bit. But I could have said, like, I'm coming to see you. I came 6,000 miles. And you're slamming me left and right. Left and right. I'm like, well, I need you like I need 3 heads. Right? But obviously that would have been disrespectful. It was an unbelievable sanctification of God's name there. Right? Why? I showed them respect. Right? Showed everyone else their respect. I don't like a lot of things I heard. Okay. I answered some things I needed to answer. Other things, I just shrugged. I said, okay, that's your opinion. You can have your opinion. I got to toasted them. In 25 seconds, nothing to talk about. Made mincemeat out of them. I'm not tooting my own horn. It wouldn't have been that hard. But that's not the point of what should have been done. But so why am I bringing all this up? So not because, people say, but, wasn't it hard? Yeah, it was. But it was what first of all, it was what I expected. Not 100%, but it was pretty much what I expected. And at the same time, I'm looking at a lot of people, and I'm going to get flack for saying this also, but I'm looking at a lot of people like they have a 25 IQ. Right? So I was very nice. I said, okay, so what are you basing what you say? You have any sources? And they're like, no, that's what I believe. I said, but you don't have any sources. I have sources. A lot of you want to hear that? No. Just leave me alone. Okay? Right? I'm not saying you should get in these conversations, see family, if it's going to be problematic, etc. I had to be there. There's no question I had to be there. I went out there, made a huge effort to go. Right? It was an hour away from where I was. But that was the whole thing. It was the whole thing. Right? But I didn't ask myself, oh, what did your soul have to do to take this? Why do you have to go through it? I have no idea why I have to go through it. Why I have to, hear people say what they say. Don't know. I can tell you one thing. I don't react the same as I used to. I don't need to react like I have a chip on my shoulder, even though maybe I do. But, at the end of the day, it doesn't help. But you're going to say, someone's going to say, isn't it annoying? Yeah, it's annoying, and you dedicate your life to something and people laugh at it. They make fun of it, and all these things. It's annoying. I would agree. But I don't get annoyed. I don't get annoyed anymore when I see someone who's got a 25 IQ when it comes to Judaism and they say what they say. I don't get annoyed anymore. I mean, maybe sometimes a little bit, but, I let it slide. Why do I let it slide? It's not going to help. All my answers not going to help. They're not, they're not interested. So it's a good way to not let them get under your skin. It's a good way to say, I'm bigger than this. I don't need this. I'm not saying I'm better. Nothing to do with being better. Right? The Torah says you cling to God. You do what he says. Okay. That's what you got to do. And if you don't, there's payback. There'll be payback. But it doesn't mean because I do the right thing that makes me better. And I think, oh, I'm so much better. It has nothing to do with being better or not. Right? I do the best of my ability what God wants, hopefully. And if other people don't, or whatever, okay, it's their choice. I'm not looking down on anyone. They want to make their choices. Good. Let them make their choices. But there are things that, person gets all cooked up about, in their heart. That's how we sort of get onto this, that about what I think and what's in my heart. Yeah, there are a lot of things in a person's heart that are bad. Anger is bad, right? Someone asked me this question last week, right? About anger and, and terrible things that anger can bring out. True. It's, even the Rambam says, the Rambam says that, even by faking anger, if you had to discipline a child and you have to get angry at them, you cannot discipline a child when you have any anger. You can say that's impossible, maybe. Right? But even if you have to discipline a child and you have to show anger, Rambam says you better fake it well, extremely well, because you don't have any anger at all. Anger destroys, totally destroys. So you can ask me, do you know any people don't get angry? No. I mean, I'm not getting into everyone, behind closed doors what people do. I don't believe there are people who don't get angry. At least a little bit or whatever. But the Gemara says a person gets angry, guess what? When they get angry, even if the pit of hell is below them, they're not going to repent. Because anger destroys. Any level of anger destroys. So anger, you got to root up from the beginning. You got to absolutely destroy it as much as possible. A person, and when does anger come, most of the time, I shouldn't say most of the time, some of the time, when you're not prepared. Person lack of sleep. Person's not feeling well. Something happened, puts them in a bad mood, and then someone says something, you go, bam, and you totally slam them. You didn't necessarily mean to slam them. But, how many people wake up from a nap and feel awful and just feel angry? Why? So that's how some people react. You could have slept for 20 minutes, you could have slept for an hour, could have slept for 2 hours, and you feel rested. A person there is such a phenomenon. A person can feel rested after the nap, but they're angry. Why are they angry? Why in the world are they angry? There's no reason to be angry. So you can say, well, it's a hormonal imbalance. We could use that for a lot of things, right? But, there are people that wake up from a nap angry. It's not rational. I don't know exactly, what's going on, but it's not necessarily rational. You have time to wake up. I get it. Doesn't mean you should be angry. Doesn't mean that, but it happens for whatever reason. Right? So a person has to work on that. When a person's angry, they don't see anything else. I know someone angry till this day, they'll die being angry. So, I have similar claims that they have, but, got to deal with it. You got to figure out how to deal with it. If you can't deal with it, you got to get help. You got to get professional help. even though I would agree with certain things, 100%. We agree on similar things. Very good. This person dealt with it one way. I dealt it with another way, right? Totally different way. By them, it's all consuming. Totally all consuming. By me, it's annoying. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say not, right? Definitely can be annoying, but I dealt with it in different ways. I'm not saying it was easy by any stretch, by any stretch. But, at the end of the day, everyone's got their own trials, over here. So in the bigger scheme of things, do we understand why tragedy happens? No, we don't understand. And you're not going to tell someone, wow, it could have been a lot worse. This could have happened. That could have. No, that's not going to console somebody. They're the ones picking up the pieces, right? But at the end of the day, even God forbid, person had a child, died of crib death, right? What are people going to say? Well, at least they're in a better place. I don't think a parent necessarily wants to hear that. That's not necessarily comforting. You could also tell them, listen, there's such concept as reincarnation. That's what the soul, you can only tell a person who's been through that when they're ready to listen. When it's really raw, they won't hear it. And I would tell you it's only maybe a tenth, a quarter of a consolation. I'll give one other example. Then I see there are a lot of questions here. I know somebody, a friend of mine's daughter had a late miscarriage. She had a late miscarriage. And after she had this late miscarriage, now you can say it's wishful thinking or whatever. This person had a dream. And in the dream was the soul of the child that wasn't born. Now, the soul of the child that wasn't born told the mother, listen, you didn't do anything wrong. Your husband didn't do anything wrong. But I had to go through this process in order to get, my soul had to get fixed up. And now I'm the highest levels of, paradise. And, you shouldn't worry, etc. So you can say, okay, nice dream. You say, well, a lot of dreams don't mean anything. This seemingly has significance, right? Now, does this woman wish she gave birth to a child? 100%. 100%. But at the same time, you have a dream like that, you see things a little bit different, right? Does that answer 100% a loss? No. I'm not going to say 100%. I'm not going to say necessarily 80%, 60%, right? Maybe 20%, maybe 30%. I'd have a hard time saying it'd be more than that. And this woman's going to get up and say, oh, everything's great. They're still going to feel the loss because they're the ones still picking up the pieces. And the family, God forbid it's tragedy, is going to pick up the pieces, right? But the question is, what do you do with it now? How do you see the bigger picture? It's hard to see the bigger picture. It's not easy to see the bigger picture when these things happen because you're going to say it's insane. All these Arabs, all they want to do is kill Jews. True. It's what they want. And Israel's not a big country. So, you can know people who know people of the person that was killed. It's tragic. Can't stop it. Definitely can't stop it. I was telling people in the States, keep in mind one thing, at least here in Israel, right? At least here in Israel, you know who the enemy is, right? Outside of Israel, who knows? Who knows? Someone would try and kill you for your shoes, for your jacket, for who knows, right? Here, Jews do not normally act against Jews in a violent way, usually. The further away they are from Torah and mitzvahs, yes. Can Jews be involved in organized crime? Yeah. Could they be mafia people? Yeah. Could there be senseless killing between them? Yeah. You don't see that among religious people. You're not going to, in general, you're not going to see religious people killing other religious people. It doesn't happen. I don't even say it's a small percentage. It doesn't happen. In general. Safest communities. If you didn't have any other elements around the community, you can leave your door unlocked. That's how safe it is. Maybe today it's changed a little bit. But, okay, so I'll say you have to lock your doors. Fine. Right? But you're not going to see violence like that. It doesn't exist. I'm not even saying it's it's a tiny percentage. It doesn't exist. Right? So So again, we don't understand, we don't fathom. There's a bigger picture. We're just not privy to the information. God's not telling us the information. Is it tragic? Yeah. It's definitely tragic. For the families, it's tragic. For everyone else, it's tragic. So what's the message? What's the message? God's telling you, I want more. I want you to serve me better. I want you to work harder. So someone will ask, so what do I work on? Try and work whatever you need to work on. Try and work on everything, a little bit here, a little bit there. Whatever it is, we have to be better. Because the better we are, the easier the end of days is going to be. If we're not doing what we're supposed to do, it could be a lot worse. A lot worse. You look at Jeremiah, other prophets, what they speak about by the end of days, it's horrific. Take 8 months to bury bodies. 8 months, imagine. That's, give or take, let's say 29 days in a month. 8 months, that's whatever. 215 days, 218 days, that's every single day you're burying bodies. A third of the people are going to get wiped out, a third are going to survive, a third are going to be injured. See how many of them survive. It does not sound pretty at all. So, seemingly, God forbid, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Unless there's just an unbelievable repentance movement, everyone repents, that would be great. We're all playing the guitar, singing Kumbaya, everything would be beautiful. But, hard to imagine that's the case. I mean, I'll just give another example. Just, the craziness. I didn't take a selfie. I should have, just to prove I was there. So, the second day I was there, I was in the States. So what do we do? So I had a bunch of things to get in Walmart. So I went to Walmart. And whatever, I'm in this aisle with my wife. All of a sudden, they're screaming, like, out of nowhere. All of a sudden, I see police show up. My wife's looking at something. I was like, I think we should go to a different aisle. I don't know, someone slapped someone, hit someone, this, that. The police showed up. I was like, wow, it's so good to be here. So good to be here in Walmart. I should have, started doing a TikTok video or something. Anyway, you don't know. It's just, you're in that situation. You say, okay, stuff happens. Whatever, you move on. But, like I said, at least here in Israel, you know who you're up against. You definitely know who you're up against. You just don't know when things could happen, not happen. But anyway, yeah, I digress here. Let me see. There are a number of questions here, or at least comments. Let's see. Someone asked if Hashem silenced the angels over the drowning of the Egyptians, how much more did Hashem suffer watching his own people being killed? True. That's very true. In other words, the Gemara says that the angels want to sing praise to God while the Egyptians are drowning. God says, how can it be? My creation is drowning. How can you want to sing praises? Right? It's hard to understand. Right? God is in exile with the Jewish people. When God looks down at this tragedy, he didn't want it to happen. He made it happen. Right? There's payback for whatever reason it may be. Does God want to see his people die? No. I mean, imagine what his pain was by the Holocaust. Can't even imagine. I mean, look how bad people, how horrific, people were killed and maimed and burnt and whatever, gassed. It's, humiliated more than anything else. I just listened to Rav Leff, should be well, was talking about the fact that, it was easy to be nicer to your dog than a Jew. Like, all of a sudden, like, you say there's a new morality, right? He was talking like in the 60s. It was a new morality. What was the new morality? Be immoral. That was the morality, to be, so it changes. So what the Germans do, may they be blotted out, may they rot wherever they are, right? What did they do? They had a new morality. What was the new morality? A Jew is worse than a cockroach, right? Jews deserve to be killed, smashed, destroyed, right, etc. And dogs are to be loved, and Jews are beneath dogs. What changed? all of a sudden morality changed? Yeah, because, this guy made a change, right? Morality changed. You think that's what God wanted? No. You think God wanted to kill, 10 great righteous people? Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Ishmael, Rabbi Trajan, like all these great righteous people in horrific ways. I mean, Rabbi Kiva had his flesh combed from iron combs as he's still like giving his sermon about, why he's going through this and all that. He'd say, come on, that was from the sale of Joseph by the brothers, and it came out and it was meted out the punishment that way. Okay, you have to understand the connection, between the two. But we want our righteous people being mauled, and, certainly not. Is that what God wants? Certainly not. Rabbi Kiva's students in the Gemara and Brachos asks, that this is the merit for learning Torah? This is the reward for learning Torah? We can ask that question. Someone said that in a disgusting way when these 4 righteous people were killed 8 years ago, in Jerusalem. Oh, all the Torah they learned, what a waste. What a waste. Could have seen life, seen the world, done other things. What a waste. I was ready to take my Louisville Slugger. Very ready. Our chutzpah. But that's the same question. That's the merit for learning Torah. We don't understand. Right? You don't think God's shedding tears for that? Of course. But we said maybe God plucks the roses in order to save from a greater tragedy. That's not going to answer the people who have to pick up the pieces afterwards. Certainly not. I'm just saying, just how to look at it, in theory. Someone asked, was able to meet with any of us? Nope. Didn't meet any. I had one student that's in Florida, but they were close by. They were really close by. I saw someone else I grew up with, went to my parents' synagogue, whatever, many years ago. Many years ago. I hadn't really spoken to him that much or, seen him in, 100 years. Not exactly. But, that was also a Kiddush Hashem because, he's got 2 kids. He's a little bit younger than me. And one kid is 8, one is 5. And this 8-year-old just stared, like for a while, like never seen an Orthodox Jew in his life. And no idea, never seen an Orthodox Jew in his life. Right? So hopefully made a good impression. But most people were, too far away, but there were, whatever. I saw, like the one student I saw, actually I met the rabbinical court in Miami. That was good. That was actually very good. Now they, at least they know me by face. So that was good. And I spoke to a lot of people. Spoke to a lot of people I hadn't spoken to in a long time. So, that was good. That was definitely good. But a lot of things that were just, I can tell you, depressing. Extremely, depressing. But okay, that was expected. Someone asks, is it true that demons are not allowed in the land of Israel anymore? I don't know about that. I mean, who says demons exist anymore today? They used to exist way back when. The Talmud tells the stories of Shindalit. We call them Shady. Or lack of a better word, we call them demons. Right? It could be their power was totally suppressed from what it used to be. So we don't, we're not denying demons exist. They definitely exist. The more, speaks about it, in many different contexts. So that being the case, today, they don't really exist. Their power has been totally diminished. But the question being that they're not allowed in the land of Israel, I don't know. I don't know what the source of that would be. The Gemara says where they hang out, and these rabbis saw them. Does that mean they don't belong in the land of Israel? That I've never heard of. That I've definitely never heard of. Let me see other questions here. Person that say a blessing over bottled water. I go to a completely different place with the bottle. Do I need to bless it again before drinking more? Yeah, you should. Just change the location. In other words, if you made the blessing in one place, you went somewhere else. Yeah, you should make the after blessing before you go to that other place. Otherwise, problem of change of location. Let me see other questions. What is the Oratorah called? Oratorah is called, one second. It's called what we call Torah Be'al Peh. Torah She'Ba'al Peh, literally, that's how we translate it, is oral law, meaning you have the Mishnah, which was organized by Rabbi Judah the Prince, Rabbi Yehuda Nossi. He put all the Mishnah together. The Gemara is the commentary. The commentary on the Mishnah. The Mishnah and the Gemara make up the Talmud. Now, Talmud's considered oral law. You got the Jerusalem Talmud. You have the Babylonian Talmud, which is really the more authoritative text that we follow. You also have Medrash. Medrash is also considered oral law, as well. You got Medrash on all 5 books of the Torah. And you got all the commentaries. Also oral law, right? None of this was, supposed to be written down. It's all supposed to be oral. So, you got the early commentaries, later commentaries, all part of oral law, right? All the way down to the commentaries today. Someone asked, where can you find an English Mishnah or Talmud on artschool.com, right? You go to artschool.com, you can find it, but I would say it's not for women. I mean, you want to learn it. I'm not going to say not, but I'm not going to get the whole thing why women should learn it, but that's a different issue. Someone asked, does Hashem mourn and feel pain when righteous people suffer? Sure. He doesn't want righteous people to suffer. Right? He's not interested. Right? He's not interested. He's not interested that righteous people should die. Right? But at the same time, righteous people, as is brought down in different places, righteous people can atone, right? Can certainly atone for a lot of people. They're not, let's make clear. They are not born. That's not why they're put in this world, right? They're not put in this world to die for others, right? That 100% is a Christian concept. Now, what can happen is that God takes a righteous person, and instead of taking 10,000 or 20,000 or 50,000, God takes 1 or 2 or 5, let's say. Now, does God feel that? Sure. Does God want to do that? No. God's not interested in taking righteous people. He will absolutely if he has to, right? In order to maybe atone for others, in the bigger scheme of things, right? But God's going to feel bad and mourn, a righteous person more than other people. In other words, I would say like this. We said before, the Gemara says that the Gemara says that God is going to look at the angels want to sing. Sorry, the angels want to sing at the demise of the Egyptians. God says, how can you sing when my creation is drowning? Now, what would we say? We'd say, let him drown. Not only let him drown, let the fish just devour them. But we see the Torah says the Jewish people saw him on dry land. Why did they see him on dry land? Seemingly, they're allowed to be buried. Now, if it had been up to me, now I was playing God, I put on my funny glasses, my funny mustache, I would have said, come on, let them do what they did to Bin Laden. Throw him in the water, let the fish eat him. Why allow them to have a proper burial? Why spit them out on the dry land? You know why? Unbelievable idea. Spoke about this once in one of my videos on the Parshas Beshalom. Right? You take a look at it on Beyond Orthodox Conversion Doc on YouTube. But the bottom line is they admitted that the God of the Jewish people is fighting against them. I would have said, so what? The fact that they admitted God is fighting against them, that means they deserve to be buried. Look what they did. They caused 80% of the Jewish people not to get out of Egypt. Only 20% came out, Rashi said. So, 8 or 9 or 10 million people did not get out of Egypt. They died in the plague of darkness. I would have said, let them dry, let them burn. Let them drown, let the fish eat them. Let these sharks come rip them to shreds. Come on. I can think of a million ways for them to die in the ocean. A lot of good ways. A lot of good ways. But they deserve to be buried? Why do they deserve to be buried? I never would have said such a thing. Right? Not a million years. Right? The commentaries say, why they deserve to be buried? Because they admitted God was fighting against them. What's the connection? The fact that God fought against them and they admitted it, look what they did to the Jewish people. Look at all the hardship the Jewish people went through. Not to mention the fact was 20% came out. That's a small number that came out compared to who was there. And you're gonna let them be buried? Huh. I would have said let all these fish eat them. Right? The commentaries say, guess what? Guess what? They admitted, God's in charge. God's calling the shots. That was enough. That was enough for them to merit to be buried. So based on that, if God is mourning for the sake of these evil people that he had to demolish and he had to kill, all the more so if it would be, here you're talking about non-Jews. If you're talking about Jews and you're talking about righteous people, all the more so, right? All the more so God is going to mourn over here. So yeah, that's the answer. Does Hashem mourn and feel pain when righteous people suffer? Sure. He doesn't want them to suffer. Right, but it could be they're going to suffer for a minor infraction, and that's going to allow them to come to the next world squeaky clean. They're not going to have to suffer. So wouldn't we all sign up for that? We'd all sign up for that. If we know we're going to suffer so much in this world, but the next world we're not going to suffer at all, we'd all sign up for it. What's the problem? We say every day in our prayers, we say, don't bring me to trials and tribulations. But if you don't have trials and tribulations, you don't grow. Catch 22. Right? So the more pain we have in this world, the better we look in the next world. Doesn't mean you won't suffer in the next world, per se. But we should say, come on, give me more pain. Give me more suffering. Give me more people who make fun of me. Come on. Why not? We don't want it. No, we don't believe it. We don't want it. It's too hard. Suffering is hard in many ways. Right? So we don't want to go through it. But you don't grow without it, true? So again, the more Lefitsar Agra, the more that, we pay a price in this world, the greater the reward. Meaning the more difficulty we go through, the greater the reward. Now the question is how we deal with the difficulty. All right, we're a whole other discussion. But the harder it is, seemingly should be the greater reward. The tests don't stay the same. Seemingly you pass one test, the next test comes a little bit more difficult. Test after that a little more difficult. Right? In other words, God doesn't say, oh, you got off easy on this one. You did okay on this one. I'm going to hit you with an easier one. No. Life, unfortunately, does not get easier. It doesn't say if you have kids, little kids, little problems. Bigger kids, bigger problems. But little kids can also be big problems. Right? So at the same time, across the board, we don't have it easy. There's a lot of different things going on at the same time. A lot of different things. So if that's true, I got to make the best of whatever it is. And I have to be able to understand and see the bigger picture, which is a very hard thing to do. But that's our obligation. If a person doesn't do it, you won't be able to live. I'm not saying you commit suicide, God forbid, but it's going to be very, very hard if you don't see the bigger picture. Because if you see it like Amalek saw it, everything's random, right? They brought doubt to the world. They brought atheism to the world. So then, yeah, anything happens. Why does it happen? Because it happened. A person wear a t-shirt and say stuff happens, right? Pointing to himself, right? Stuff happens. Why does it happen? Nothing's random. Well, if anything's random, right? So if you tell me everything's random, what are you living for? You're going to say, well, my bad luck today, my bad luck tomorrow. You don't know what's going to be. Or my good luck, but you don't know. Everything is just what we call a microbiome, just a chance happening. That's what Amalek brought to the world. That's what we have to fix. And show and say no. And say that things happen for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. We just don't understand why. There are many things we don't understand. Right? But it's not random. And someone can say, oh, look, this woman gave up, got 13 kids and died. So random. Nothing's random. Doesn't mean we understand. People are quick to say, I know better. I know how the world works. That's just cruel. It looks cruel. I agree. I'm not going to deny that. It's a very hard thing. It doesn't mean it's random. It doesn't mean, well, it's just your bad luck. No. There are bigger things going on that we don't understand. We don't fathom. You have to get through it. Okay. Got to pick up the pieces. True. Right. Doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it also doesn't mean it's random. Things just in general happen. Ramesh Schneider was very fond of saying, my Rebbe's Rebbe, of blessed memory, would say, every missile has its target. Or I met so many Bostonians had the target. They got their target, right? So he said, if it's your time, that's where it's going to happen. Everything has a purpose over here. Even if we don't understand it, right? It doesn't matter. Somebody asks, can women learn Mishnah, Gemara? Again, no. I would say no. Other people, there are left-wingers out there and say, yeah, they could. But I'm just going to say one thing on the topic, and that is that the Gemara itself says it's not a good thing for women to learn. They're not going to find, some people will find their fulfillment in it, right? There are women that, enjoy this give and take and all that, right? But the Gemara itself says it's not a good thing. It has to be, further clarified. Why not? Right? But I would say, again, I'm not saying it's coming from a feminist ideology, right? But the Gemara itself says it's not a good thing, right? That's what I'd say on that. Yeah, any other questions? So you're right. Slender points out the Jewish people were at the last gate of impurity. True. So God had to take them out. You're right. But God could have taken them all out. There was 80% did not want to come out of Egypt. It's hard to imagine. Imagine living in Auschwitz. Say, no, it's better in Auschwitz. What do you mean? I'm going to be better in Auschwitz. Right? What's a simple answer? Right? What's the simple answer? Simple answer is, where are they going? They're going into a desert. Is there any food in the desert? No. Any water in the desert? No. So it's flexing their emunah muscles over here. Going into a place that, how are they going to survive? Well, didn't God decimate Egypt? Sure. 100%. Right? Can't God satisfy all their needs? Yeah, but oh, Mother Hubbard, ain't nothing in the cupboard. What are we going to do? No food. You don't think God can take care of the food? So one of the reasons they have to go through the desert, they have to work on their emunah muscles. Had they worked on their emunah muscles properly, they would have gone straight into the land of Egypt. Into the land of Israel. But they sinned with the sin of the spies, and they had to go around China, no pun intended, for 40 years. Because God wanted to be in a high spiritual level. A very, very high level of emunah. Right? So God gave the man every day But they also doubted, how do I know it's going to come tomorrow? Just because it came yesterday, the day before, whatever. They said, oh, we missed the fish. We missed the watermelon in Auschwitz. What did they miss? For goodness sake. I was in the States. I'm like, food was good. I'm not going to say not. But at the same time, plenty of things get in Israel. Now they get it, they get in America. Used to be, you take certain things back that you couldn't get, you can get everything now. Right? That's like a non-issue. But imagine someone grew up in Auschwitz. Right? You say, wow, it's so much better there. I missed the fish. What do you mean you missed the fish? You remember what happened there? Remember all the suffering? Yeah, it was some level of lack of emunah. Some level. Because it's very hard to understand. When you go through those parshas of the spies and Korach and all that, very hard to understand why they think they have it so bad. Even though all their needs are taken care of miraculously. Right? And they think it's so much better. So again, God was preparing them, to flex their belief muscles in him and living at a high spiritual level. They didn't think they were holding. But you're going to tell me that they see God face to face on Mount Sinai? True. Right? It could be by the first two, they saw God face to face and they died, came back to life. The other eight, either they heard from God himself or, they told Moses, you tell us what it says, too strong of an experience and all that. Very good. But at the same time, that's the greatest generation in the history of man. So if you're telling me it's the greatest generation in the history of man, very hard to understand. What are they complaining about? Oh, I missed the fish. I missed the fish in Auschwitz. I missed, we used to have big watermelons, these other things. Now we just get manna, whatever I think it is. It tastes like steak, or fish or other things. Not the same. What do you mean not the same? You got destroyed in Egypt. You want to really go back? Right? So what's simple explanation? Again, I'm saying simple because it needs a lot of clarification. Simple explanation is the fact that they, God is working on their emunah. And God wants them every second of every step. They're in the desert working on their emunah so they can go straight to paradise. They go straight to the promised land. That would have been at the end. That would have been it. But no, they complain. You have the sin of the spies, and that's it. Then it takes 40 years to get into the land. Could have gone much more direct. Much more direct. But that's what happened. God was preparing them, working on their emunah, and they failed. At a certain level. But it's very hard to understand because this is the greatest generation in the history of man. Very, very hard to understand. At a superficial level. Yeah. Take any other questions? Someone asks, because we have a spark of God in us, we have earned heaven, otherwise we couldn't. Everyone has a spark of God, right? It's created. Everyone's created in God's image. Right? If everyone's creating God's image, so guess what? You have to work. Everyone has that ability to have a portion of the world to come. Jews and non-Jews. Mentioned last night in Pirkei Avos, it's much easier for a non-Jew because you have less obligation. You have less obstacles. For a Jew, there are much greater obstacles. Much greater obstacles. So therefore, if everyone's creating God's image, everyone has that spark. Everyone has that spark to want to do the right thing. If they don't want to do the right thing, it's their choice. God will not stop them. If they want to do the right thing, God will help them. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to stop here. I do this every Sunday, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. Or you can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com.